Imagine a $40,000 NVIDIA GPU just melting itself into slag in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, just totally destroyed.
Right. And it isn't failing because of like a software glitch or a bad line of code. It is literally destroying itself because a physical water valve on the data center floor lost pressure.
Which is wild.
And the crazy part is, the software managing that server had absolutely no idea the pipes even existed. Because, in a traditional IT environment, the plumbing and the servers are entirely separate universes.
Exactly. They never talk to each other.
But if you look closely at what is happening today, you start to realize that the rise of artificial intelligence is fundamentally breaking those old boundaries. Like AI is forcing a violent physical reshaping of the modern data center.
It is a complete paradigm shift. I mean, we are moving from managing digital workloads to managing physical infrastructure at a microscopic level because the hardware running these massive language models, it simply cannot survive without it.
Which brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are unpacking a highly detailed internal document. It's a competitor battle card that compares 4 absolute titans of IT infrastructure management. The big 4, right? We are looking at Supermicro SCC, Dell OME Managed Enterprise, HPE OneView, and Cisco Intersight. And I know on the surface, infrastructure management sounds like the driest corporate jargon imaginable.
It really does.
But this document is actually a roadmap of a massive industry split. It shows you exactly why managing a modern AI factory is a completely different reality from managing a traditional server farm. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Before we get into all the crazy liquid cooling and raw power grid requirements, where do these platforms actually live, and what is their core philosophy?
So at their core, these platforms function as the central nervous system for an entire data center. When you are operating, thousands of servers, storage arrays, network switches, you need a command center.
Right, to monitor health, push firmware updates, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly, to ensure everything is functioning correctly. But the deployment strategies of these 4 companies highlight very different visions for the future. Like Cisco Intersight stands out immediately.
Because they're doing the cloud thing, right?
Yeah, they are aggressively pushing a software-as-a-service, cloud-connected model. They want you managing your infrastructure remotely through their cloud environment. They lean really heavily into hybrid cloud operations.
Meanwhile, Dell OME Managed Enterprise and HPE OneView take what feels like a much more, traditional or mature approach.
Very traditional.
They're primarily customer-hosted virtual appliances. Like Dell focuses heavily on centralized lifecycle management for their PowerEdge servers,
right?
While HPE OneView focuses on what they call profile-driven, software-defined infrastructure. And then you have Supermicro SCC, which completely zeroes in on one highly specific area.
For rack-scale infrastructure observability.
Yes, and lifecycle operations specifically for AI and data center environments. To put this in perspective for you, think about managing a smart home.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Cisco basically wants you controlling all your lights and locks from a slick cloud app on your phone while you were at the grocery store.
Right, total remote control.
But Dell and HPE want a massive, highly secure physical control box locked in your basement that runs the house.
Kept entirely on premises.
Exactly. But Supermicro is out there trying to wire the electricity and the plumbing for the entire neighborhood block.
What's fascinating here is how these deployment strategies reflect entirely different risk tolerances. Cisco is betting that the efficiency of a, cloud-managed platform outweighs the hesitation enterprise clients have about sending infrastructure data over the internet.
Which is a big hesitation for a lot of companies.
Huge. Dell, HPE, and Supermicro recognize that a massive portion of the market absolutely refuses to do that. That is why, despite their differences, all 4 platforms make sure to support offline or air-gapped deployments.
Let's explore the mechanics of an air-gapped deployment for a moment, because it's fascinating. We are talking about a system with literally no physical or wireless connection to the outside internet.
None. Completely isolated.
So how do you even manage a massive data center if the management software can't phone home to download, a basic security patch?
Well, it requires an entirely different workflow. Like if you are a government intelligence agency or a global financial institution, you have to bring those updates in manually.
On USB drives or something?
Basically, yeah. Often on encrypted physical media. The management appliance sits isolated within your walls. It scans your network locally, identifies a server with an outdated BIOS, and you deploy the patch from your secure internal repository.
So no data ever leaves the building.
Right. And the fact that Cisco still builds an offline virtual appliance despite wanting everyone in the cloud proves that the demand for absolute isolation is still a massive factor in enterprise security today.
But if we go back to Supermicro, wiring the neighborhood block, the only reason they are forced to do that is because the neighborhood is generating an unprecedented, frankly, terrifying level of heat.
Oh, the heat is unbelievable.
This is where the physical reality of AI hardware completely hijacks the narrative of this battle card.
The thermal output is the defining bottleneck of the AI era, period. Traditional servers run warm, and you manage that by blowing massive amounts of chilled air through the room.
Standard AC units.
Right, standard CRC units. But an AI server packed with high-end GPUs runs so hot that air physically cannot absorb and remove the heat fast enough. The laws of thermodynamics literally force you to pump liquid directly across the chips.
Which explains a massive disparity in how these platforms handle cooling. Like, looking at the dock, Supermicro is the only one rated advanced here.
Because they natively support coolant distribution units, or CDUs.
Exactly. They support direct-to-chip liquid cooling, and crucially, they support leak detection, whereas Dell is marked standard, focusing primarily on just standard server thermals.
Yeah, airflow.
And HPE and Cisco are both limited. They give you basic visibility into the server temperature, but lack public native integration for CDUs or rear door heat exchangers.
Right. And a coolant distribution unit is essentially a massive heat exchanger that isolates the facility's main water loop from the delicate IT equipment loop.
So it's serious plumbing.
Serious plumbing. And managing it isn't just about noting the temperature. The management software needs to monitor pump speeds, fluid pressure, and flow rates in real time.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to push back a little bit.
Sure.
Is it actually a good idea to consolidate all of this? Like, shouldn't a facility manager with a wrench be handling the plumbing while an IT administrator with a keyboard manages the GPU memory?
You would think so, yeah.
Why force the IT management software to look for puddles on the floor? That seems like crossing a boundary.
Because the timeline for catastrophic failure has collapsed, completely collapsed.
What do you mean?
In a traditional data center, if an air conditioner fails, the room slowly heats up over maybe 20 minutes. You get an alert, you walk over, you assess the situation.
You have time to react.
Exactly. But in a high-density AI rack, if a coolant pump fails or a valve loses pressure, the temperature of those GPUs spikes past critical thresholds in seconds.
Wow. Meaning the hardware literally destroys itself before the facility manager even gets out of their chair.
Precisely. It's gone. The software monitoring the GPU's digital workload must be intimately aware of the physical water pressure keeping it alive.
That makes a lot of sense.
If the pressure drops, the IT management software has to instantly throttle the GPU's power draw or just shut it down to prevent physical destruction. You cannot have a silo between IT and facilities anymore.
The telemetry required to pull that off must be staggering. I mean, looking at the battle card section on GPU telemetry, Supermicro is again marked advanced.
Yeah, they use some very specific tools for that.
Right, the document notes they use Prometheus-compatible exporters like NVIDIA DCGM and AMD ROCm. Dell is strong for their own PowerEdge GPUs, but HPE is limited natively, basically pointing users to an entirely separate tool for that data.
Right, you have to bolt something else on.
And Cisco is standard, relying on the specific server model you buy. What exactly is a Prometheus-compatible exporter doing that makes it so advanced?
Well, rather than relying on a proprietary closed system that just, asks the server every few minutes how it's doing, Prometheus is an open source standard. It's designed for high-speed, massive-scale data scraping.
Oh, it's way faster.
Exponentially faster. When you use tools like NVIDIA's Data Center GPU Manager, you aren't just checking if the GPU is turned on. You're pulling millisecond by millisecond data on power draw, memory error rates, voltage fluctuations, and thermal limits directly off the silicon.
So dealing with the plumbing and the heat is really just a symptom of the underlying beast, which is massive power draw.
Oh, absolutely. It all comes back to power.
Which transitions perfectly into how these systems interact with the electrical grid. Supermicro stands out with a feature called Ingress Power Source Switching. And Dell, HPE, and Cisco are explicitly marked no for this. What does that actually mean in practice?
It means interacting directly with the building's electrical feeds. Imagine a massive AI cluster drawing power from a specific sector of the local grid.
Okay.
If that grid starts experiencing instability, say a voltage drop or a brownout ingress power source, switching allows the management software to communicate with the intelligent power equipment.
And do what?
Physically redirect the rack to draw from a secondary stable power feed without dropping the AI workload.
Wait, really? So what does this all mean? Are IT administrators suddenly expected to be electricians balancing raw power feeds across data halls?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the role of the IT admin is fundamentally changing because in traditional infrastructure, physical space was your primary constraint.
You just needed floor space.
Right. You bought a server, found an empty slot in a rack, slid it in, and plugged it in. It was basically playing a game of Tetris with metal boxes.
But with AI, you could have a rack that is only a third full physically, but you cannot put another server in it.
Exactly, because you have completely maxed out the electrical capacity of that section of the floor, or the local cooling loop just cannot handle another degree of heat.
So space doesn't even matter anymore.
The battle card notes, Supermicro has strong rack and data hall awareness. They calculate power usage effectiveness, or PUE, by pulling inputs from the entire rack, the power strips, and the cooling systems all together.
And the others don't do that.
Dell handles PUE via a specific plugin, while HPE and Cisco are limited, lacking that broad facility-level calculation. Supermicro treats the entire integrated rack as the base unit of compute rather than the individual server.
Okay, listening to all of this, it sounds like Supermicro is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the modern data center.
It does sound like that, yeah.
But there is a glaring catch here. When you look closely at the rest of this battle card, there are massive operational categories where Dell, Cisco, and HPE drastically outperform Supermicro.
Oh, definitely.
And it reveals a fundamental divide in what companies actually need. Let's talk about getting a server up and running in the first place. In OS bare metal provisioning, Dell and Cisco are rated strong.
They are excellent at it.
Right. Dell can execute IDRC-driven bare metal cloning. HPE is standard. But Supermicro is marked limited, requiring external tools to load the operating system onto the physical machine.
See, bare metal provisioning is the bread and butter of traditional IT. Imagine a massive bank buys 500 identical servers.
Okay, lots of servers.
Instead of sending technicians to manually load an operating system onto each individual machine, Dell's integrated hardware, the IDRAC controller, allows the central management appliance to push the operating system, configure the network settings, and boot all 500 machines simultaneously over the network.
That saves so much time.
It requires deep, mature software automation,
which Supermicro seemingly lacks natively. And it gets even more pronounced when we look at compliance and drift detection. Dell, HPE, and Cisco completely excel here.
They dominate that space.
Dell and Cisco use advanced, template-based compliance policies. Supermicro is limited to just basic inventory visibility.
Yeah.
But, if I am a chief information officer, I don't care how good your liquid cooling leak detection is if your platform can't pass a basic company compliance audit.
Right, you'll fail the audit immediately.
Isn't a lack of drift detection an absolute nightmare for enterprise security?
It is a massive vulnerability in a highly regulated environment. Drift detection is the automated process of constantly checking a server's firmware, BIOS settings, and security configurations against an improved company baseline.
So it's looking for changes.
Exactly. If a rogue administrator goes in and opens a specific network port on server number 402, drift detection immediately flags that deviation and can automatically revert it.
Oh, wow. So choosing your management platform is ultimately like choosing a vehicle.
How do you mean?
Well, Supermicro is a Formula One car. It is built for one highly specific, incredibly extreme purpose. It gives you deep, microscopic telemetry on the engine temperature and tire pressure of the GPUs and liquid cooling loops, because the machine operates on the razor's edge of physical destruction.
That's a great analogy.
But Dell, Cisco, and HPE are like a luxury corporate fleet vehicle. They don't have liquid cooling metrics because they just don't need them. Instead, they automatically update your registration, deploy your software, constantly check for compliance drift to make sure you aren't violating company policy, and they will basically parallel park for you.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize the divide. Dell, HPE, and Cisco have spent decades perfecting enterprise software compliance.
They've been doing it forever.
They have mastered API integration using industry standards like Redfish and REST, allowing disparate enterprise tools to communicate seamlessly. They know how to automate rollouts across thousands of generic servers without friction.
Because that's what most businesses actually need.
Right. If you operate a major retail chain or a hospital network, your primary concerns are security, compliance, and keeping the lights on without manual intervention.
You weren't pushing 30 kilowatts of power into a single chassis, so you don't need to monitor the water pressure. You need to know if a server's BIOS is out of date and vulnerable to a ransomware attack.
Exactly. And that brings us to the ultimate stress test of any management platform, which is scalability. When you move from managing one experimental AI rack to outfitting a massive commercial data center, hyper-specific tools often break under the weight of standard enterprise requirements.
Let's look at the numbers on the battle card. Dell publishes support for actively managing up to 8,000 devices. Cisco also scales up to 8,000 servers.
Huge numbers.
HPE handles 1,024 servers per appliance natively, though they offer a global dashboard that can aggregate visibility for 20,000 servers. But I have to stop and scrutinize Dell's numbers here.
What's wrong with them?
Dell claims a 25,000 device mode. But if you read the fine print, the battle card specifically states this mode is limited to discovery, inventory, health, and alerts with no plugins or advanced functions.
Right.
That sounds like a vanity metric. Is it actually fair to call that true scalability if you can't push an update or run an automation job on those devices?
This raises an important question about how we even define management today. Dell's 25,000 device mode is essentially a monitoring heartbeat.
Just checking if they're alive.
Exactly. It sends a simple ping to a traditional web server every few minutes asking, "Are you online?" The bandwidth required for that is negligible. But compare that to what Supermicro is attempting to do.
Right. Supermicro's scalability notes are incredibly cautious. They state that high device count scale is achievable for traditional air-cooled environments. But AI and rack-scale telemetry completely changes the equation.
It's a whole different ballgame.
They warn that the massive volume of data requires careful sizing, bandwidth planning, and potentially running multiple instances of their software.
Because ingesting a simple ping every 5 minutes is vastly different from maintaining a Prometheus data fire hose.
A fire hose of data.
Yeah, when you are pulling millisecond thermal data, pump pressure metrics, GPU voltage fluctuations, and memory error rates, the sheer volume of telemetry coming off just one AI rack might easily equal the data bandwidth coming off 100 traditional servers.
That's insane.
The management appliance can literally drown in the data.
Which explains the differences in platform resilience, like how these companies keep the management software itself from crashing. Supermicro uses a Kubernetes control plane with 3 master nodes for high availability.
Right.
Cisco supports high availability via their cloud SaaS model or a clustered virtual appliance. HPE supports an active standby setup. But Dell relies on a single appliance model, meaning if you want resilience, you have to rely on your underlying hypervisor, like VMware, to keep it alive.
Which is pretty standard for traditional IT.
But how does a Kubernetes architecture actually help Supermicro handle that data firehose better than a single appliance?
Well, a single appliance is a single point of failure. If the data volume overwhelms the CPU of that virtual machine, the management layer just goes down.
You're flying blind.
Exactly. Kubernetes fundamentally changes that by distributing the workload. By running 3 master nodes, the platform acts as a self-healing cluster.
Oh, I see.
If one node is overwhelmed by a spike in GPU telemetry or physically crashes, the other 2 nodes instantly take over the management workload without dropping the connection to the data center floor. It is a modern, cloud-native architecture adapted for the extreme, localized demands of an on-premise AI factory.
If we look at this battle card from a macro level, the ultimate takeaway is that the modern data center is no longer a monolith. Like, we are witnessing a strict bifurcation of the industry.
Without a doubt.
If you are running a traditional enterprise environment where security compliance, automated bare metal provisioning, and workflow consistency are your highest priorities, tools like Dell OME, Cisco Intersight, and HPE OneView provide an incredibly mature, sophisticated layer of control.
They remove the operational friction from everyday IT.
But if you are building an AI factory, if your infrastructure is pushing the absolute physical limits of compute density, drawing unprecedented power, and requiring dedicated liquid cooling loops, traditional management tools will leave you blind to the most critical failure points.
You'll melt your GPUs.
Right. You require a platform like Supermicro's SCC that natively integrates with the physical and thermal realities of the hardware.
And it leaves us with an incredibly provocative paradigm shift. As these AI clusters continue to scale, consuming tens or even hundreds of megawatts of power, the lines between disciplines are completely blurring.
It's all merging together.
It forces us to ask a critical question about the future of the industry. Will the next decade of IT management be driven by software engineers writing network automation policies? Or will it be dominated by thermodynamic engineers figuring out how to stabilize local power grids and manage water pressure across thousands of high-density racks?